Let me first introduce Radha Bharadwaj. Radha Bharadwaj was born and raised in Chennai, South India. Prior to Space Moms, Radha wrote and directed 2 feature films, Closet Land and Basil, in which she worked with Oscar winners such as Jared Leto, Ron Howard, and Eiko Ishioka, and prominent actors such as Sir Derek Jacobi, the late Alan Rickman, Christian Slater, and Madeline Stowe, and acclaimed artists such as Philip Glass and Richard Einhorn. Radha's original script for Closet Land won the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Nichols Screenwriting Competition. And legendary feminist author Kate Millett called Radha, quote, a very brilliant filmmaker, end quote. And she devoted an entire chapter to Closet Land, Radha's first film, in her book, The Politics of Cruelty. Radha is married to me, which is how I was able to get through this entire introduction without consulting Google or Wikipedia even once. And I am also the one of the producers of Space Moms, which is an opportunity that I got through sheer nepotism. But you know, family is the most important thing. So I'm proud to have gotten that opportunity. But we're here to talk about Radha's new film, Space Moms, which is available on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, and other streaming platforms. Why don't you orient us by telling everyone the basic true life story that Space Moms comes from, and how you were inspired to make the film?
I have, as David said, written and directed 2, films with, Hollywood talent and so on and so forth. But through the years of living in the West, I had wanted to present a different narrative about the people, my people, right? My country, my culture, my people. And this is something that I think many people who are of indigenous backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, can identify with. What I saw a lot in Western media, a lot, not always, not everything, but a lot, was what we can call as poverty porn. Like whenever any content was made about India, be it news or entertainment or whatever, it was either dwelling on India's poverty or the caste system or women's oppression, brutal men, rapes, things like that. I'm not saying those things do not exist in India. They exist in India, they exist in every part of the world. But there also needs to be a positive, if there's a positive story, that needs to be coming out too, because otherwise the picture gets to be imbalanced. And people, both of Indian descent and non-Indian descent, tend to view India as a place where only nasty things happen, right? So I've been sort of consciously seeking a project which would introduce another narrative, present another narrative on India, on not just India, but other indigenous cultures which may feel that our representation is skewed and stereotyped. And on September 24th, 2014, India successfully put an orbiter in Mars's orbit. And India became the first country in the world to do this on the very first try. That was a huge accomplishment. And I've been following the mission, sitting here as an expat in Los Angeles. And I was aware that there were very many women engineers, who had central roles in the Mars mission. They were not decorative objects or secretaries or coffee assistants. These were actually people heading entire critical departments, and they were working shoulder to shoulder with the guys. And the day that the mission succeeded, I actually told David, their mission has succeeded, ours begins. This is the story that I want to bring, to screen. And that became the Space Moms journey. That was the reason I made the film, to present another, another inspiring, positive, life-affirming, life's purpose-affirming, narrative in the marketplace.
Okay, well, I remember when you got the idea for Space Moms, and as part of your preparation, you did extensive interviews with several of the real-life engineers, most of them women. You even interviewed a number of men. And I remember you telling me that you could really relate to these women because their upbringing was similar to yours. But do you think that people who were not raised with Indian parents will also be able to relate to the upbringing that you portray in Space Moms?
Absolutely, because I think there's, when I talk about my mother, her unlived dreams, all of that, that's not an Indian thing, that's a human thing. I think humans everywhere, parents everywhere want the same thing for their children. They want their kids to succeed. They want their children to do better in life than they themselves, did. And, if they have the means and the ability, they nurture their children's talents, piano lessons and, so on and so forth. An Indian mother may send her child to sitar lessons, right? A Western mother may send her child to piano classes. But what is the difference? There's no difference. The underlying emotion of motivating your children, wanting the best for them, which is a key part of Space Moms, actually. And that is universal. And the other thing that is also universal is this, the work-life balance, the struggle to do well, both by your family at home and, at work with your professional responsibilities. Juggling that is also part of any woman. And you don't necessarily need to be a scientist. I'm a filmmaker, I'm not a scientist at all. But I find this push, when I'm on the set, I'm thinking of my home. When I'm at home, I'm thinking of, oh dear me, I want to be on a set making a movie. In both places, you want to give of your very best. There's always the guilt that you short-shrifted someone, along the way or not. And there is the tussle then to make peace that wherever you are, you will bloom there. If you're at work, bloom there. If you're at home, bloom there. But these are universal themes that has got nothing to do with India, or you don't necessarily have to be Indian, to be able to participate in the human drama.
Yeah, I think you started to touch on what I also wanted to ask you, because I've heard you say in your sleep or otherwise, I've heard you say that working moms all over the world can relate to the women you portray in Space Moms. And in fact, that's being borne out by the reaction we're getting, enthusiastic reaction from people that have seen the film. But why do you think that working moms in particular, from whatever country or whatever culture they're from, can relate to Space Moms?
Because I think women are rooted both in the family. They usually tend to be the heart of the family, in any family, whether you have a working mom or not, the woman tends to be the one that defines the relationships. Usually friendships, the families, or the couple's friendships are usually friendships that the woman has brought into the house, that sort of thing. So women tend to be the heart of the home. And if they have demanding jobs and demanding professional lives, that could pose a conflict. In fact, it saddened me to hear that so many young girls, teenagers in the West, were refusing to consider STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, because they were worried about work-life balance. So when I was interviewing the women engineers in particular, to make Space Moms, that was something that almost naturally came up. And they had sort of, some of them were very driven to excel in both and making their lives harder because they could not stand a dirty house. So the house had to be clean, as well as, the work responsibilities have to be executed. Whereas some had a more like laissez-faire sort of thing. Okay, one day if the house is filthy, who cares, it's a demanding day, let's be human and forgive ourselves, or just make peace that everything is not going to be perfect all the time. But as long as you hit most of your goals, you're making progress in life. And actually that dichotomy, that conflict between two kinds of personalities in the engineers, one a type A driven perfectionist, and the other one equally good at her job, but with much more of a, let's all muddle together kind of attitude, and how the perfectionist learns from the other one. That's a conflict that I explored in Space Moms. It was something that I actually saw in the engineers that I interviewed, the women engineers.
Yeah, a lot of people who have seen the film have picked up on what you just mentioned. Without giving anything away, you mentioned, well, there are two, for people who haven't seen the film, there are two leads of the film. They're the co-leads of the software team for the mission. One is named Shanti, and I think she's the one that's type A and really doesn't care if people like her or not. And the other is Vimala, who's very different. And do you think, did you consciously model these two very different approaches to women in leadership positions? And do you think a lot of women are responding to it because they can relate to these types of trade-offs?
Yeah, they absolutely can. They feel that many women in demanding careers, demanding professions feel the push of wanting to excel in both. And the big question, can we have it all, right? It's a big female question. It's never asked of men. It is asked of women, and it's something women ask themselves. It is indeed something that I did notice in the very many women engineers that I interviewed. They fell in either one of the two categories. Either they were perfectionists, determined that everything had to be just so everywhere, at home and at the workplace, or they had learned, maybe it's just life, some of the older ones just had their edges knocked off a bit and were able to relax more, be comfortable in their own skins, and make peace with the fact that sometimes everything won't be perfect at home or everything won't be perfect at work, but you roll along with it and you make peace with it. You do your best, and somehow things come together. If you're putting in the right amount of effort in both home arena and work arena, things do come together. And that is the lesson I actually want girls in STEM, girls considering STEM, to take away from. Please do not talk yourself out of a career in science if that's what you want, because you fear that you will, the work-life balance will be all out of whack. Space Mom shows you that that's utter BS, I mean, you will find a way, we always do. Human beings are enormously adaptable. You will find a way and things will work out.
Yeah, you really demonstrate that in Space Moms. And I think that's, part of what moves a lot of people. I mean, something they identify with, and the sort of the juggling that they have to do in their own families. And you show how the women handle it, but you also show how, the men are very much a part of this equation. Why don't you discuss that a little, so people who haven't seen the film will get an idea of some of the things that you depict.
Thanks. When I interviewed the men, the head of India's space agency, he's retired now, but this gentleman, I had an extensive conversation with him, and I asked him about, because he's mentored a lot of these scientists, and I asked him about mentoring women, is there any difference when you mentor a female as opposed to when you mentor a male? And he said something which many of even the women engineers echoed, that once you enter a lab or a science situation, you're as good as your brain and your work. No one cares about your gender. You can't afford to care about your gender, right? You just have to, you have to accept that we're all male, female, working together on, on this mission, and this mission has to succeed. And he said, and therefore he did not differentiate between mentoring men and mentoring women. I mean, anyone who was promising and showed talent deserved his mentoring, and he would give it to them regardless of who they were, regardless of what their gender is or their religion or age or social status. None of that counted for him. And I think that, that hopefully answers your question. In the film also, I do show something that I did encounter when I interviewed a lot of these women. Many of these women scientists said that they were enormously supported by their male colleagues at work, but also by their husbands. Many, said how husbands and fathers or sons, children, knew that mom was working on something critical and pitched in. And I wanted to capture that because it's true, number one. And number two, it is a good thing for men also, male children, to see that if you are, have a gifted and driven female in your orbit, please do everything you can to, support her. Just like you would be in awe of male talent and support the male, boy genius, please do. There are also girl geniuses. There are also girl wonders. If you're lucky enough to have one in your family or at your workplace, please do everything you can to support, nurture, and help that person accomplish their, what they're trying to do, because that'll be good for everybody.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've heard people react to very positively, the way, you model this work-life balance thing, not only for the women who are struggling to balance family with their brutally demanding career, but also how their spouses can be supportive spouses, and how their kids can be supportive kids, and, all throughout the extended family. And I think that's something that's not often depicted, but, we're getting a lot of great feedback on that. Talking about the engineers, I know that you've changed the names and personal details of the women that you interviewed. And just so that people listening can understand, why did you do that? And do you think you've nonetheless given us an authentic representation of who these people are?
Yes, I interviewed a lot of the engineers, as David has said, and all through 2016 was actually spent on that before I wrote the script. the changing of details, right? I mean, changing, let's say someone is Jane Smith, making it something else, Deborah Green, right? That was done at the request of the engineers themselves, male and female, and at the request of the Indian Space Agency. They said that, this Mars accomplishment was an accomplishment of many, many, many people, many, many, many departments, many, many, many years. And to single out certain people and make them heroines in a movie may create a sort of, like a little resentment or unhappiness, and they need the team to be happy to work, right? To work productively. So this was something which I thought was wonderfully generous. The women themselves said, no, please do not, identify us by our real names. So I did not. And I've, taken enough creative license and liberty that no one will be able to see the film and say, oh, that's that person, right? But there are central things that I did, preserve and keep so that the whole thing rings true. I mean, we've had people who actually worked at ISRO, at India Space Agency, look at the movie and say, my God, this is us. How did you know? This is exactly what we were going through. Or these are exactly the kind of things we talk about. You've captured us completely. The reason is, I think, because I came very open to who they were, and many details that they, many of them shared with me. Some of them some key ones I've been able to distill and use in the movie. Like, for instance, the perfectionist versus the let's muddle through personality. One woman did indeed have a teenage daughter that was having a very critical exam. That was medical school exam, around the time of the mission, and she was very worried about that. Another woman was very insistent that no matter how late I come, if she told her small son, you still have to show me your homework. I have to personally look at your homework and make sure that you're not going to slip your grades because I've got this mission to do. Another woman genuinely was encouraged by her illiterate village mother. That was very moving to me. This was one of the most senior women, in the Indian Space Agency. And she shared with me, she grew up in a village. It was her dream to be a, space engineer. And her biggest encouragement came from her mother, who was uneducated. Not illiterate, uneducated, uneducated mother. This uneducated mother became the driving force for this girl, pushing and encouraging her every way. And I captured that. That is one of my favorite, parts of my own film. School children from all over India were following the mission. So that sort of, in my head, birthed this character in a remote village, a school teacher who wanted to be a scientist, who could not because of poverty, but who then decides to use the example of the space moms to inspire her girl children, right? And I took that directly from something that was happening from school children in India who were writing fan letters to the scientists, who were avidly following the Mars launch, on their, if children were in cities and were wealthy, they had phones. In the villages, they used to gather around a common TV and all crane their necks to look and say, oh my God, what's happening? That enthusiasm, I used it. And the other thing is also like what do you call an auto rickshaw in India? I think it's called a tic-toc in other parts of the world. It's this three-wheeler which ferries people. It's like a cab. It's much cheaper than a cab and much riskier. You get jolted all around the place if you sit in one of these. But the driver, an uneducated man who's ferrying these women, the space scientists, back and forth, he becomes interested in the mission, and he then, at the end of the film, he encourages his daughter. His only dream had been his daughter should get married, should have a great big fancy wedding, when she gets out of high school. But now he changes his dreams for his daughter, and he encourages her to look at the skies and want to conquer space herself one day, right? That was also inspired a little bit by one of the senior scientists, a female. She told me the mission in the critical stages so enraptured the whole country that even these top drivers used to ask them, Madam, what stage is your mission in? Have you gotten to Mars yet? And when she said that, I was moved, I was very moved by the aspirations of these, everyday people. And I wanted to capture that. So that found its way into the script. So yes, this is not a documentary depiction, but on the other hand, I think it's truer to the spirit of these women than even documentaries sometimes are.
Yeah, I thought that was very moving, the way you portrayed the emotional impact that this mission had on average people, and weave that into the story of the engineers themselves. And I think that's a lot of people will find that inspiring. Speaking of inspiring, in the last month, we've learned about some very remarkable women who I think most of us have never heard of before. We've learned about Swati Mohan, the Indian American engineer who is such a driving force behind NASA's Perseverance Mars rover project. We've learned about Sarah Al-Amiri from the United Arab Emirates Mars mission, essentially the leader of that mission, as well as the leader of the UAE's space agency. Do you think that Space Moms provides any insights into what likely drives women like that?
Well, I think that what is interesting is India has, of course, a big mathematical and scientific legacy, which I celebrate in the movie. But India is not unique. I mean, in the sense that the ancient Egyptians had, a legacy in science and math, as do the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas. Many of these civilizations, were rich cultures, and they had, a lot of, they have a legacy of scientific and mathematical and astronomical excellence. And in making Space Moms, I celebrate India's excellence in this, but my hope was also that people from other cultures would, start to look into their own histories and see, do we have, role models within our own culture that we can, pattern ourselves after? People need to feel grounded in their roots, and that their roots are strong and solid and good roots for them to actually go forward and succeed in life. It's a strong belief of mine. I give an example, like in the movie Stand and Deliver, the wonderful actor Edward James Olmos plays this teacher in South Central Los Angeles, not a good part at all, in a poor, impoverished school. And the teacher is Hispanic, and he encourages the children who are largely Hispanic, the students he teaches. He's a math teacher, and he teaches them mathematics by telling them about the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Incas. He takes them to their culture. He says, your ancestors built the sundial. They built these amazing, wonderful structures, which would be impossible without an understanding of geometry and architecture. That is your legacy. And that lights the fire in them, And that's the same thing with Space Moms. But I don't want the lesson to be restricted just to Indians. I want anyone, in any impoverished circumstance, regardless of skin color, whatever, look to your own roots and see whom you can grab onto as a role model. That will be like sort of your North Star guiding you to your destiny.
Yeah, you certainly do that in Space Moms. As I think you've said, you show how India's space age achievements are rooted in her ancient civilization. And I think that's something that people of Indian heritage will take pride in. But I think even others will watch it, and I think hopefully gain a newfound respect for Indian culture. You've touched on this throughout our conversation, but I'd like to bring you back to it because you've spoken a lot, both today and publicly before, about the need for indigenous, formerly colonized peoples to take back control of their own narratives. Now, maybe you can go back to this, explain, what do you mean by it? Why is it important to you? And how is it reflected in Space Moms?
Well, Space Moms was born of a desire to present a different, narrative, about India. The colonial tropes that still exist, unfortunately, are the same things I told you about: poverty and oppression, and caste conflicts and religion conflicts, and that's how I suppose former colonizers saw colonies as these messy brown countries where things are someone's always killing someone else. But life, I've lived there. I lived, the early part of my life in India. I mean, for us, it's not that. It's, yes, indeed, we have, a lot of that. I'm not condoning it. And certainly films about those things need to be made too. But we have problems in the first world too. I mean, I drive by homelessness every day in Los Angeles. That is completely gut-wrenching. We have, unhappy people. We have poverty, we have disease. We have people without resources in the first world countries too. And no first worlder would appreciate a depiction of their countries purely by those things, by those problems. They would say, yes, we have all of that, but also we have this. We have an active middle class. We have accomplishments at NASA. We have this, we have that, we have our great schools and so on and so forth. An Indian or any other, former colonial subject is no different. We also want to see good things about ourselves and our cultures. It is natural, it is human. And if those accomplishments really existed in the culture, why not celebrate it? That narrative should also be there. So that was the spirit which led me to make Space Moms. And I'm hoping it also motivates other people, in countries of the Middle. I'd love to see someone make a film about the UAE's Mars mission, which is absolutely phenomenal. I would love to see somebody celebrate the woman who, led that mission. I'd love to see that. And that kind of depiction is going to be more the spirit guide for young girls rather than seeing some fantasy Hollywood cotton candy, depiction that you have to look like this or, have hair this color, eyes this color to be a princess. I want little girls to say, why be a princess when I can conquer space? That is the true princess.
Yeah. A number of years ago, as you'll recall, you and I went to see a film called Miracle, which was about the U.S. hockey team when they pulled off a stunning upset victory over the Soviet hockey team, which was thought to be invincible in the 1980 Winter Olympics. And then years later, you told me that that film was on your mind when you were preparing to write the screenplay for Space Moms. Now, why would you be thinking about a sports movie like that, about ice hockey, when you're preparing to write about India's Mars orbiter mission?
Because it has to be entertaining, number one. No one's going to watch a film, however worthy. I mean, there's a lot of content competing for eyeballs, and no one's going to watch any content, however worthy, if it is not entertaining, if it does not touch the heart. And Miracle was about a ragtag team of underdogs accomplishing something absolutely unheard of, right? And that was, to me, in my head, no different from a ragtag team of Indian underdogs mocked at, even in their own country. There were so many disbelievers, people who believed that money was better spent on other things, and what the hell are you doing space research for? You're going to fail, you're going to fail. They were hearing that nonstop for the 14 months of this mission. They were hearing that, but they still persisted, like the team in Miracle did. They still persisted and they prevailed. And those stories are the most satisfying because nothing was ever given to these people. Every little inch had to be fought for and claimed, fought for and claimed, fought for and claimed. And same thing with Miracle. So in structuring the screenplay, I had in mind that it should be sort of like a really gripping sports movie where you're watching the ball. I'm not a sports person, so pardon any mistakes I make here watching the ball, whether it hits the wicket or the goalpost or not or whatever. The same excitement that people would have in watching. I'm not a sports person, but I enjoyed Miracle, right? And likewise, I wanted people who are not scientists, who had probably very little interest in science, to still be able to watch and identify with the drama and the characters and the arc of Space Moms. And I wanted to make the science in it even simple and understandable so that even the most science illiterate person can still come and get the movie. You're not missing anything because you didn't, you fell asleep in your physics lesson. No, you could fall asleep in your physics lesson and still, completely understand and identify with Space Moms.
And then hopefully be motivated not to fall asleep in your physics classes in the future. But I think everybody loves a great underdog story. And I think that's yet another feature of Space Moms that's really causing people to emotionally connect to it. So I think that is very apt to think of it like a sports movie. Now, you played a supporting role in the film, an acting role, but I think was a very significant role. It was about a school teacher, or the role was a school teacher in a poor rural village in India who uses the Mars mission to inspire her schoolgirls. Now, first of all, practically, what was it like to direct yourself as an actress? Did you find yourself to be a difficult actress as a director? And why did that role resonate with you?
Well, when I went to India to make Space Moms, I'd never shot in India before, so I was going in for a completely wild ride, and it ended up being way wilder than I could have ever imagined. And anyways, I went prepared to do anything, within reason to get the movie done. And that would, because I'm an actress, I've acted on stage, so I knew that that may also include having to play, one of the parts, right? So for this part, because our budget was so limited, we needed somebody who could speak Tamil. It's my, it's a language I speak. And so I said, okay, I'll do it, because we didn't have the money to fly an actress over, and put them up in the city that we were shooting in. So I just jumped in. It could just as easily have been any of the other parts that I could have jumped into, right? If we, didn't find, people, that could, stay within the confines of our budget and had the linguistic skills. Some people needed to know English, some needed to know some other language, so on and so forth. So I took this part. I've directed myself on stage, and making a film is no different. The only thing that was made difficult was in India, people usually do not shoot sync sound. Everything is dubbed. And therefore, it tends to, people aren't necessarily quiet when you're filming. We were filming live sound. I hate dubbing. I think it completely removes the viewer from the experience of from the emotions that are being expressed on screen. So I had to also monitor that, and that was kind of annoying. Like, I wasn't able to fully get into the moment sometimes as quickly as I would have wanted to, because our shooting schedule was very limited. But I always have enjoyed acting. I've always enjoyed playing people who are not me. The further removed they are from me, the more joy I get out of doing it. So it was a whole load of fun playing the school teacher of this, dirt poor, school, and motivating these girls. And the girls were amazing. I mean, children are have a natural sort of impressionability. It's sort of, you tell them something sad and immediately their faces wilt. You just have to, engage them, reel them in, and slowly, coax that thing out of them, that emotion. And, I felt a real bond with those girls that in the school that we filmed in. It was a real life, poor village school. And it was it was the last 3 days of the shoot, actually. We ended on my scenes, and it was sort of a real bittersweet thing. Bitter because the whole experience had ended, the filming had ended. But sweet because it was such a high note. We got such good scenes, we got such good performances from these girls, and it felt like a real blessing. So
yeah, I thought that was amazing. The girls were really students at that poor rundown school that you filmed in, and they were so genuine and so real. And you think, well, they're just playing themselves. In a sense they are, but they're sort of delivering the emotions, right on time, and that was really something. We've gotten a lot of wonderful, emotional, heartfelt reaction to this film on social media and in other forums. Radha, of course, you were just in a forum last week organized by the Consulate General of India in San Francisco, where we had a very distinguished panel, and everyone was just saying how beautiful and moving the film is. Do you think the things that you were trying to do have been reaching people, and are you heartened by the reaction that you've received to the film?
Well, any creator of a work, right? If you have something to say other than just entertainment, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but certain films we walk into making them because they absolutely have to get told. Those stories will not get told if we do not do them ourselves. And, the pride in one's own culture, the appreciation for family, the appreciation for colleagues, the impact, the ripple effect that something as momentous as a Mars mission can have on a remote village, miles and miles and miles away, on, poor kids who do not have the resources but still start to dream big. I mean, all of those things are things that people are picking up and writing to us about. I'm proud to say here that we actually even got a shout out. I personally got a shout out from Mae Emerson, the first woman of color in space, an accomplished, wonderful, amazing woman. But look at the generosity of spirit of this woman. She reaches out on Twitter and says, "Can't wait to see your movie." and tags me, tags the movie, and retweets the link where the, streaming platforms are. I would never have expected that. I would have never expected I'm going to make a movie that's going to get the attention of someone like Dr. Mae Jemison. But I think that's what happens when you do something authentically for authentic reasons, for good reasons, right? Sometimes it does, touch other people, and you sometimes, get help from the most unexpected places. Space Moms has been completely a journey, not just of the very, very many obstacles I faced, but the help that came in, places where I least expected anything to come out of. The strangers that extended support, like Mae Jemison. I know of her, of course, who doesn't? But she doesn't know me. She's probably never heard of me prior to this. But for her to take the time to actually put a tweet out, and that opened it up to so many other people in that space. So many people in NASA and stuff saw her tweet, and hence were made aware of Space Moms. These are the joys, these are the joys, and they completely, it's, what do they say about labor and stuff? Like when the woman sees her baby, she completely forgets all the pain of labor. It's kind of similar to that, You get these bouquets, and then you forget all the brickbats, all the beatings you've endured to, to make the film and to get it to this place.
Well, I think we're just about out of time. I do want to remind people that Space Moms is available almost everywhere in the world. It's certainly available in the US, and it's certainly available in the UK on streaming platforms, including Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, a lot of other platforms in the United States and the UK as well. But I mean, those are the easy ones that most people use. Radha, is there anything you want to quickly say, before we wrap this up?
I want to thank again our wonderful hosts. I want to thank AllBright Collective. I want to thank Olivia Burton. I want to thank everyone who took time off to spend time with us. And I hope you will see our movie. I hope I haven't dissuaded you from seeing the film. And thank you again so much for your support. Truly appreciate it. It means so much to us.
Yeah, Radha, David, thank you so much on behalf of AllBright, and thank you to Olivia Burton for sponsoring the event. We're so kind of thrilled to hear your story and hear the inspirational story behind Space Moms, and I hope it provides us with some kind of, I want to say inspiration, but I've already said it, so I was trying to find another word. But it's been a really enlightening conversation, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Jasmine. Appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for joining, and wishing you a wonderful evening or a wonderful day wherever you are.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Bye.